Well, good afternoon. You're in for an exciting ride for this last session, not just because it's about the future of transportation, but we have an excellent lineup of executives with very different perspectives, and yet actually, as we've discovered from our discussions, quite a lot of overlap in our vision of where this is going. Let me begin with a little bit of context setting. Why is this a big deal? You heard yesterday from Arun about the electric grid and how we're still running the same Tesla Edison grid. And the electric grid runs at about 50% capacity utilization. Well, if you flip to the transportation system, we're still running essentially the Henry Ford kind of transportation system. But the efficiency, I want to give you some data points. Quick show of hands, how many of you came here at least in part by car? Almost everybody. And how many of you have had an accident or had a close family member had an accident ever? Most of you. Okay, that's what I figured. So, your car is actually parked most of the time, 96% of the time. You're in it 4% of the time. Of that 4%, you're actually going somewhere around 2% of the time because the other half, you're either stuck in traffic or looking for parking. So that's 2.5% asset use on what is your second biggest purchase after your home. So that's the asset side. Let's talk about the fuel side. Of the gasoline that you pump in, thankfully a little bit cheaper right now, about 75% of it turns into heat of one form or another. Most of the rest turns into friction, brake wear, tire wear, and most of the rest goes to moving the 4,000 pounds of steel around you and the empty seats that are in most cars, because we only have a person and a half in vehicles on average. And only 1% actually of the energy embodied in that gasoline goes to moving you, the human being, going from A to B anywhere. Let's turn to the safety side. We actually kill 33,000 people every single year. We kill in the US, we kill 1.2 million globally through traffic accidents. If you're between 25 and 50 years old, it's the leading cause of death. It's an epidemic, as Larry Burns says, of traffic accidents, and we're not treating it the same way we would if people were dying from a disease at that scale and at that rate. So there's a lot to be done in terms of safety. And lastly, let me turn to the neglected part. For 5 generations, we've spent 5% of GDP on road infrastructure. Our great-great-grandparents already started investing, and we continue to do so today. If you think about a road, most of the time it's empty. Yes, we have these rush hour periods when there's a lot of cars on it, but most of the time we've built roads for that peak capacity, just like the electric grid. The difference is we're not running at 50% capacity utilization on average. We're running at 0.5% capacity utilization of our roads on average. Most roads really are empty most of the time. So I look at all that and say, wow, this is an amazing opportunity, and that's what we're here to discuss today. And I think the other thing to keep in mind is, in this industry, assets turn over relatively quickly compared to the electric industry. We're not talking about 40 to 60-year life of power plant. We're talking about vehicles we buy or lease every couple of years, and the fleet turns over every 12, 15 years, depending on which country and where we are in the recession or not. So there's a lot of change happening here, and we're going to get right into it now with our great panelists, and start with you, Drew.
Well, thank you, Stefan. I want to thank you for inviting me onto the panel, and thank all of you for coming today. I'm going to start with a little personal anecdote about how I got to where I am in my career and how it relates to the future of transportation. In 2001, Kyoto was around, and different countries were looking at how they were going to meet their Kyoto commitments, and I ended up doing a research project in New Zealand for 6 months, looking into how New Zealand could become sustainable from a transportation perspective. As part of that, I looked at everything from primary energy, so that's the sun in the case of solar power, or the fossil energy somewhere in the ground, through extraction, through distribution and refining, if there is that, to the final end use, and the useful work that's actually moving the car down the road. These sorts of analyses, people probably know them as well-to-wheel analyses. So I was looking at that specifically for New Zealand, looking at how does the fossil energy enter the economy there? How do they get their electricity? What are their flexibility mechanisms if they want to go 100% sustainable? And I looked at hydrogen fuel cell vehicles. I looked at electric cars. I looked at domestic reserves of various sources of energy. And at that point, I was like, well, it seems obvious to me, the future is electric. That's where you can get the best efficiency and the best flexibility. And hopefully, not only is the future electric, but the future is sustainable electric in the sense that you have a renewable grid or a sustainable grid, distributed to places where you can charge your car, and then you have your car, which is 85 or 90% efficient, your electric car, which is 85 or 90% efficient, actually moving you down the road with that stored energy. And so at that point, I said, well, the idealist in me says we need to do this. And then it's what's the realist in me say. So I think that humans can kind of do whatever they set their mind to. And if you look at what happened with the silicon industry over the last 4 decades, from the first transistor that was this 4 times the size of my hand, to transistors now that are billions, in the size of my pinky, we've shown what we can do when we put our mind to something. And I think for a long time, batteries have been considered as almost like an intractable technology where the costs will never come down. But in the last decade, we've seen that be completely turned on its head as we've started to focus on bringing the cost of batteries down. When I joined Tesla 10 years ago, I idealistically said, well, humans can do it, we're going to do it, let's see if we can do it. And Tesla went through a proof of concept vehicle, which was the Roadster. It was high risk when we started. Everybody was excited about it. At the company, the market was sort of not sure if it was going to succeed, but our customers loved the car, and it sort of demonstrated that EVs can be successful and that battery costs can come down. And ever since then, we've been doubling down on our commitments to advance our mission, which is to accelerate the adoption of sustainable transport in the world. And I guess my personal anecdote is summarized as, electric is the most obvious, from a technology perspective, manner of moving people down the road. And Tesla is engaged in trying to accelerate that as fast as possible. I'm glad that I was able to see that over the last decade, and I'm hopeful to continue to progress that revolution forward over the next decade.
Thank you. Larry, you've seen this from inside a big automotive OEM, and now working with some very innovative tech companies, as well as a professor. Tell us your vision of the future.
Yeah. Well, I think you set it up nicely, Stefan. We really don't have a transportation energy issue or a transportation sustainability issue. We have a systems design opportunity. And I think the key to that is to work on the mass of the vehicle and its very low utilization as a product that we own. 90% of the trips we make are 1- and 2-person trips. Average speeds in metropolitan areas are 25 to 30 miles per hour. 75% of our trips are less than 8 miles long. Yet our cars carry 4 to 6 people and have top speeds of over 100 miles an hour, and the ranges are 400 miles. I think they're way over-designed for the fundamental mission of moving people and goods around. What we're seeing is, for the first time in a century, the convergence of several different technologies and new business models. And I want to emphasize this. It's not any one technology that's key to the future. I think it's the integration opportunity that we have. It's connected vehicles and coordinated vehicles and shared vehicles. Yes, driverless vehicles, and tailoring the design of the vehicle, and very importantly, electrically driven vehicles. And when you put all that together, it promises to transform mobility. I call this the power of and, really focus on that word and rather than the word or. The mobility system that I've been dedicating this part of my career to realizing involves driverless shared vehicles that are tailored to 2-person trips. I believe these vehicles can weigh less than 1,000 pounds versus 3,000 to 4,000 pound automobiles. And they can be electrically driven, which is 3 times as efficient as combustion vehicles. So you put those two together, and that gives us a chance to really, for 90% of our trips, do that with a factor of 10 improvement in energy efficiency, which is very exciting. But better yet, this epidemic of roadway fatalities is something that we truly have a responsibility to step up to. 1.2 million people die on the roads worldwide each year. If we can realize the potential of connected and autonomous cars just one day sooner, we can save 3,000 lives. So I think our obligation as leaders is to proactively realize this full benefits with appropriate risk management. In fact, I think the biggest risk lies in not getting to this future as fast as we can. So while we're here really to talk about energy, I think the message I want to leave with you is I think one of the most important sets of opportunities we have is to marry up the electrically driven vehicle with connected and autonomous vehicles and really begin to think about mobility systems that match up with the way we live our lives.
Thank you. Mitch, you're on the other side. You're not making vehicles, you're using them every day in your business, all different size. What works in practice? What are you seeing?
Well, Stefan, thank you for having me. You know, if you think about what FedEx does, all of you think that FedEx deliver your goods, your packages, and we do. But at a higher level, what we're really doing is we're connecting the world, and we're trying to do it sustainably and resourcefully and responsibly in that approach. So what that means is we're focused on a number of different issues, both technological and operational, with respect to how we do what we do. And it focuses on aircraft, it focuses on facilities, it focuses on vehicles, and other aspects of the enterprise. We're here to talk primarily about the vehicle side of it, but let me just give you an idea that our revenues over the past few years are up 40%, and our aircraft emissions intensity is down by 21%. We're 2/3 of the way towards a goal that we have for 2020. We're a top 20 user of rooftop solar in the country. And that is through new technologies. We've been talking about the solar arrays here and solar technologies over the past 2 days. Very important. Technological improvement, technological innovation. On the aircraft side, it's both technological innovation, operational improvement as well. And on the vehicle side, we've got a 30% goal for fuel efficiency. And that's a proxy for carbon emissions. And where we're at is in 2014, we were at 29.5% across that fleet. Over 40-something thousand vehicles, fleet average. We've done that through a program we call Reduce, Replace, and Revolutionize. Reduce the number of vehicles that you need through technological routing optimization, something that you both would know a little bit about. The second is to replace vehicles, put the right vehicle on the right route. Smaller, more fuel-efficient vehicles on longer routes that have less payload capacity or less needs for payload. Bigger vehicles in dense urban delivery situations. And then revolutionize. Find the technology of the future, be putting that technology into effect today because it's going to be the reality of tomorrow. And that's how we're trying to do it in that. If I had to sum it up, I would say that we try to be constructively dissatisfied. It really is. We're always looking for the next aspect. Larry, I think you just talked about the and. Sometimes I talk about the Coke Zero commercial, where if you've seen it, where the subject of it says, "We're giving you this, giving you this, giving you this," and he goes, "And?" So it's looking for that as well. I think it's real, but I think it really comes down to being constructively dissatisfied.
Wonderful. And last, Tim, tell us about beyond cars. I know you don't even speak about cars; you call them robots. So what does that world look like?
Yeah, thanks for inviting me onto this panel, Stefan, and thank you to the audience as well. I think there's fresh snow out there, so we've definitely got the true believers in the room today. My name's Tim Kentley-Klay. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Zoox. You probably haven't heard of us. We're a stealth mode startup, as they like to call it in Silicon Valley. That means we have our heads down, building our product and not being distracted by what comes with publicity. I guess similar to Drew's story, I'm from Melbourne, Australia. I have a background in the creative arts. I've founded 3 businesses out there that work across animation, film, and interactive. And about 3 years ago, I was listening to the conversation about environmentalism, observing what companies like Tesla were doing, spearheading EV mobility, which, to be honest, I think is one of the greatest acts of leadership that we've seen in the 20th century today to get that up and running. And observing what Google was doing with its driverless car program and DARPA and that kind of thing. And for me, I kind of, as a creative person, I had the insight that this is a watershed moment in mobility where the whole thing is about to change. And it's not about a self-driving car. It's not about a connected car. It's not about EV. This is actually the dawn of the age of robotics. If you put all those parts together, you're talking about creating a robot. You're talking about creating a mineral-based device that has a perception system and algorithms running on a computer that goes down to a mechatronic drivetrain. And it's able to navigate through the environment without human intervention. And I think that's a very profound thought. And I think that needs a lot of innovation on technical side, but also on the creative side in terms of what the product experience of that can be. So at Zoox, we believe that we're building what comes after the car, just as the car comes after the horse and carriage. You know, we're actually in the age of coach building for around 6,000 years. I know we think we've been in the age of the automobile for a long time, 130 years. But it was actually around 4000 BC that we put the axle on the wheel and domesticated the horse and got coach building. And that was a really big deal for society, because to roll goods across the ground versus dragging is like 1/40th the amount of energy. And arguably it was the internal combustion engine that let us migrate from one mobility age to the next, where we mechanized the horse's biological power. And that meant getting rid of the horse. And that wasn't a trivial thing to do. It took about 60 years to figure out, if you look at it historically. You know, when the Kaiser of Germany saw the Type 1 motor wagon in 1886, he famously remarked that will never replace the horse. And he probably would think that it had a one-cylinder engine that put out about 0.5 kilowatt and a tiller for a steering wheel. Perhaps in 1908, when Ford launched the Model T, that became the archetype architecture for the automobile, and it really hasn't changed all the way through to the Tesla, which has electrified that powertrain. And so the belief at Zoox is that autonomous technology is not about incremental tool adaptation to the automobile. It's not about autopilot or super cruise on a freeway. It's about reinventing mobility in terms of the architecture of the vehicle, how it interacts with society, what the business model is, how it's manufactured. And I think you have to reinvent all those fundamentals to actually get the right solve. And as Stefan was saying, I think if you can do that correctly, you'll actually create that order of magnitude change that you need in society. So Zoox is fundamentally solving for removing the steering wheel, if you like, as a symbol of what we're doing for mobility going forward.
Wonderful. Well, for the audience, let's tackle each of these a little bit in turn. We'll go into electric, let's talk about sharing, and let's come back to autonomy and how they ultimately all fit together. From an electric point of view, many of you probably heard the skepticism of range anxiety. Oh, okay, Tesla shows me I can get the fast performance, I can get the acceleration, but it's very expensive. The ordinary car doesn't have that size battery, so how do I still get around? By the way, a little story. We drove over the Christmas holidays from Palo Alto in Northern California to south of LA, fully autonomously on I-5 with the Tesla Autopilot and supercharging twice, which is for free, by the way, because it's bundled into the price of the car. So you can do that today, but obviously that's in a high-end Tesla vehicle. Let's talk a little bit about how practical is going electric, and maybe Mitch, we start with you in terms of, for the FedEx fleet, where do you see electric vehicles actually coming into practice?
Oh, we think the electric vehicles have a real role in fleet transportation. You know, we'd started some years ago, worked with EDF on the development of the first commercially viable commercial hybrid electric vehicles. And that actually, the experience with that actually led to us doing all electric or battery electric vehicles. And so we think that in some of the urban delivery cycles that we have, especially in our express network, where we're carrying high value-added goods that are typically smaller density packages, we think battery electric vehicles make a lot of sense, and we've been working in our efforts to try to bring them to fruition for the commercial vehicle sector. We're in the Electrification Coalition and have been for a number of years. But one of the things that we did as a part of this, because typically commercial transportation or commercial vehicles lag behind innovations with respect to light duty and passenger, is that we started pushing for fuel efficiency and greenhouse gas standards for commercial vehicles. It was the first ever standards. Called for them in 2006, testified in front of Congress in 2007. By the way, the first to do so. The regulations were written in 2010, went into effect in 2014. And the idea for that, the impetus for that was to bring these new technologies to market. Now here's the great part of this. When we testified in front of Congress in 2007, we were talking about hybrid electric vehicles. We're now talking about hybrid electric vehicles in the commercial vehicle sector and battery electric vehicles, all electric. And so the ability to bring the price down and meet the duty cycles necessary while challenging, and there are challenging with respect to the manufacturing of them. Who's going to reach scale in high volumes with respect to the commercial vehicle sector? The technology works. We've been working with them. We have over 400 electric vehicles now, over 400 hybrid electric vehicles. These numbers are small, but the most important part is for commercial transportation, the technology works. Doesn't work across the spectrum of transportation for commercial purposes, but it does work for a good segment of it.
So Larry, we have record low oil prices. For an OEM who isn't a Tesla and isn't fundamentally committed to electric, still make sense to build electric vehicles?
The OEMs have no choice but to do it. We have a corporate average fuel economy law in the United States that says we have to get to 54.5 by 2025. We have a zero emission vehicle standard in California and 11 states. And so even though gasoline is inexpensive, the only way the auto industry will meet these laws will be to introduce electric vehicles in the mix. And what I find fascinating about that is as they go about building more and more electric vehicles and getting to the second and third generation designs of these vehicles, engineers do a pretty good job. On the second generation, it's usually lower cost and higher value. Third generation, it's even lower cost and even higher value. And I think we're going to see that play out with electric vehicles. At the same time, the combustion vehicle is, out of necessity, getting more complex as it tries to reach higher and higher fuel economy standards. So an example would be what Ford did with the F-150 truck, which is the most profitable, most important brand in the industry, and they made it all aluminum to save 800 pounds for fuel efficiency. So what's fascinating to me about this journey is at some point, I believe, the industry will simply realize it's easier to do an electrically driven vehicle than a mechanically driven vehicle based on combustion. I think that realization or that tipping point could happen within 5 years. So as long as the government stays with the CAFE regulations and the states stay with the zero emission vehicle regulations, Europe has similar obligations, I think we have a really good chance of shifting the entire paradigm to electric drive.
Excellent. So the tipping point is near. Let me put you on the spot, Drew. We saw a forecast from Pete Trellenberg yesterday that use in vehicles will be the predominant use of oil and petroleum products by 2040. There is a little bit of electric coming in, 5-6%, I think, is what the chart showed. What's your view of, maybe not 2040, but let's say 2030?
Yeah.
How big is electric?
Yeah, I did notice that on those slides, and I'd like to beg to differ with that outcome. There are a lot of challenges to enabling, massively available, low-cost electric vehicles, and Tesla's sort of trying to take on those challenges one by one by one. One is the availability of fast, rate-capable charging infrastructure. Our commitment to the supercharging infrastructure has been unwavering, and we continue to deploy those around the world. We've got over 500 superchargers around the world located, where people need them when they're trying to go from city to city. They allow people to get more than half the range back in 30 minutes. You can actually get usually 10 to 15 minutes of charging is all you need because you've already been driving for 3 hours and you just have maybe another hour to go before you get to your destination. So you just stop, have a bite to eat, maybe just even use the restroom, and then you're back on your way. That's the whole concept of the supercharging network. And we're committed to that. And that, we're deploying that with our own technology. We're owning them. We're developing those sites ourselves. So that's our approach with the charging infrastructure. And then the other side of it is batteries. When Tesla reaches the Model 3 volumes that we're trying to reach, which is hundreds of thousands of cars per year, we're talking about a growth in the lithium-ion battery sector that is beyond the 10 percentage point types growth. I mean, we're talking about 30% growth required in total production of those batteries on a year-by-year basis. And to do that, and to do that well, we're investing in this Gigafactory project, which you've probably heard about. And the Gigafactory represents Tesla's investment both in money, but also in technology development in reducing the costs and increasing the scale of lithium-ion battery production. We really think that has to happen, not just for Tesla to be successful, but for electric vehicles to be successful at large. And that effort is underway. There are lines being set up there as we speak. The building is fully enclosed, and there are people building batteries already there, fully assembled batteries. The cell development will be starting before the end of the year there as well.
When can people buy Model 3?
When can people buy a Model 3? Well, you know, I'll leave those sorts of predictions to Mr. Elon Musk. You know, he's been in the news making his statements. But it's certainly near and dear. All of the engineers at Tesla are very excited to see that project come to fruition. For a lot of us, it's our capstone project, if you could imagine that from an academic perspective. You know, Roadster was like the proof of concept. Model S was maturing the organization in terms of service infrastructure, manufacturing infrastructure, you know, sales, being able to sell thousands of vehicles a year. And Model 3 is really the moonshot of, okay, now we're going to go big and make hundreds and thousands of these cars a year, and everybody is committed to doing that.
So
and
come back to 2030.
Yeah, so 2030.
How many have we got?
Yeah, where do I think it's going to be? You know, I really think that once we're in this world where, you know, Chevy is making $35,000 cars that have more than 200 miles effective range, and, you know, that's our goal with the Model 3 as well, that EVs are going to take off. And that's, you know, that represents maybe GM's third or fourth iteration at this. It'll be Tesla's third iteration. And there's going to be fourth and fifth iterations, as Larry mentioned, and the prices are going to continue to come down. So I see massive adoption of EVs in our future. I really do. I see the personal automobile, both cars and trucks, you know, well over 50% penetration by 2030. Well over.
I mean, if I could comment as well on that. You know, we didn't leave the Stone Age because we ran out of stones. We didn't leave the Bronze Age because we ran out of bronze. And I personally believe we'll leave the Oil Age, not because we ran out of oil, but because it won't be worth extracting the last amounts. You know, for me, when you consider the fact that in 2050, 70% of the world's population will live in urban environments, and some of the statistics we heard from you guys about how people use mobility in those domains, if you can shift from the model of the automobile of selling a product to a customer, and as you mentioned, you know, you then have a lot of the Earth's natural resources in a product that's utilized a very small percentage of the year, to a product that is not sold to the customer, but the service is. And all the effort and energy that goes into that product is utilized 24/7 in megacities. It's zero emission, it's safer, it has a better product experience on the interior. Then I think you can really start to drive profound change in society. And so I think if you did a linear extrapolation of sort of mobility as a car with an internal combustion engine and a percentage as electric and extrapolate that to 2030, you might think that oil has got a bright future. But I think if you look at what autonomy can do to changing radically that equation, you might have to reformulate some of your assumptions.
So Tim, you're fundamentally committed to sharing in your business model, right?
Well, not too much about our business right now, no. We're in stealth mode, but yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't like a lot of talk about the environment. I'm a doer, and I'd rather just go out and think something I just think is flat out awesome and lead a team of people that agree with that as well. You know, I think the sharing is huge. Like, one thing Uber has shown is that people are willing to share their resources if it's done in a way where there's a social contract through a credit card and social media with a rating system. And I think autonomy can take that to a further level and build on top of it as well.
Larry, you had a comment?
I was just going to build on the urban application. When you look at what's possible in a two-person vehicle tailored to the urban driving that's autonomous, it's really possible to get to a world where 5 to 7 kilowatt-hour batteries make it functional, and that's in comparison, I think, to 60 kilowatt-hour batteries in the Bolt. And what are we, 80? Is that where you guys are? And what is the Model S kilowatt-hour?
Yeah, 85.
80. So the synergy of getting it really scaled to the purpose of the trip, not only does it get the mass out, but it sets up the battery to be much, much smaller and much more compatible with what's going on. So I think this is all going to tip. And the key to it is the consumer experience. Now imagine, it's sort of like the Uber experience without a driver, but you request a ride, the vehicle shows up autonomously. The beauty of this is, with Uber, you need to have one of the seats dedicated to the driver. Here you wouldn't do that. Then you have the vehicle tailored to that ride, so the mass is much lower. You get in it, it's perfect experience, it's what you want. It drops you off at the door, you don't have to hassle with parking. Then because it's driverless, it can reposition and pick somebody else up nearby. And metropolitan area densities are such that that's usually very nearby, and that's how the model works. It gets you high utilization, low empty miles, and very fast response times, and machines that can weigh less than 1,000, and I believe get us down to about 25 cents a mile, and that's in contrast to today's typical automobile with parking and with your time value at about $1.60. So this is a huge opportunity.
With robotized fleets, there is, for people who are looking deeply at this, there are just so many efficiencies that can be born out of it. It becomes like a gateway drug to optimization. Like it's, even if, for example, Uber was driving electric vehicles at scale, the efficiencies you could get out of a robotic fleet would be profoundly more. Mr. Precourt was nice enough to let us fly out on his Gulfstream jet, and it is true that I tried to convince the pilot to do a barrel roll, but he declined. But it was flying with autopilot, and it was incredibly smooth. But if you watch the yoke, it was doing this the whole time, to the point that even a skilled pilot could never keep that airframe as level and as efficient as what that system can do. And that's just one data point. If we have an autonomous robot that's going around a city, especially a city like SF, and we know what the incline of the road is, for example, coming up, we can optimize the acceleration. And so we can drive efficiency in a whole new paradigm that you could never get with a lead-footed, human driver.
So we'll come back to autonomy in a second. I want to pick up on Larry, your vision of what it looks like for passenger transport. And I was really excited, Mitch, by our conversation yesterday, that this isn't in the future when you're talking about freight. You're sharing today, right? You and the Postal Service are sharing. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I mean, think about it. What you're talking about with Uber and other services is you're talking about the individual moving into the sharing environment. But the individual's goods and commerce that we've been doing for decades, it is a sharing economy. If you think about it, with routing optimization and freight companies coming in, picking up shipments, and doing dense commercial transportation of those goods, and then taking them and then routing them out of hub operations to the disparate locations they are, and then making deliveries and making more stops per mile. That's a sharing economy with respect to the world's goods. What we're really talking about is the individual making that transition, that flip to be able to do that with their assets and their own personal mobility as well. With respect to FedEx, we've been doing for a number of years, we carry the U.S. Postal Service's priority and express mail. They hand that over to us. We use our line haul capabilities to move that, give it back to them. In return, we have for e-commerce, we have a service called Smart Post, excuse me, where we move that stuff on the ground and then give that to the post office, who are going to every postal address every day, well, 6 days a week, at least for now. And they're going to those addresses. We give that to them, and they make those deliveries on the last mile, so that our vehicles don't make that. And so this idea of a sharing economy, I find it interesting because it's more of a psychological issue. We're making the technological breakthroughs with respect to this. And now we're really talking about the psychological issues. They do it with their goods, they do it with their commerce, now they can do it with themselves.
So let's jump to the last topic. Let's jump back to autonomous driving. How many of you have driven or ridden in an autonomous car? Okay. One of the questions here is, what about cybersecurity threats? General Hayden scared us all 2 days ago. How do you know an autonomous car is going to go where you ask it to go as opposed to somewhere else? And talk a little bit more broadly about how can I trust and get comfortable with an autonomous car?
I'll start. First of all, I think it's a very serious issue. It's not just an autonomous cars with respect to today's cars as well. The amount of technology we have in our braking systems, our stability control systems, our steering systems, all make today's cars susceptible to being hacked. And I'm not an expert in this field, Stefan, but I guess I'm an optimistic technologist that the goal here is for the good guys to stay ahead of the bad guys. And I think that's going to require not just hardening up the software, but the hardware is going to have some of that as well. I believe some of the best minds are working on that, and from what I've learned, there's pathways forward. I don't want to trivialize the issue, but it's not unique to transportation. We're relying on things that can be hacked in all facets of our life, our health care systems, our financial systems, and so hopefully we can stay ahead of that game.
Yeah, I could jump in there. I mean, we treat this issue with all the respect it requires. We've invested in a number of strategic hires and also engaged the communities that are experts in this area to both internally, have like internal hackathons kind of, and really learn from the best in the industry of where our vulnerabilities are and patch them up as fast as possible. I mean, one thing that we enable with having connected vehicles is the ability to rapidly respond to identified vulnerabilities. Of course, we're also enabling those vulnerabilities at the same time, but I think the benefits outweigh the negatives there. If you look at the personal computer, initially when Microsoft and Apple and everybody was we were all connecting our PCs to the networks, viruses were spreading like wildfire, and there are always problems. And now everybody's proactive with software updates and generally ahead of the bad guys, as you mentioned yourself. So I do think it is a problem that is a real problem, but I think it's a solvable problem. And as long as nobody's walking into this future with blindfolds on, we'll avoid it. I think we'll avoid it.
Let's broaden this adoption question a little bit more beyond the security issue. Tim, you've spent a lot of time thinking about the experience of riding in a vehicle. What do you think is going to get consumers to actually adopt this kind of product, where the car, as Larry's example of the car pulls up, picks up a rider, moves on, goes to your destination, drops you off, moves on. What's going to get people into those cars?
It's a great question. Like any new technology, you're going to have laggards, you're going to have early adopters. For me, I've been getting around. I think I've been in a lot of autonomous vehicles around the world, including Google's. It's an amazing experience when you're in a vehicle and it's driving down the street and someone walks out in front of it and it stops and then they clear and then it keeps going. It opens up from a product experience, a symbiotic relationship that between man and machine that has never really been defined or delivered by humanity at this point. And part of what I'm doing, leading the product vision at Zoox, is getting the tone of delivery of robotics at scale entering the general public just right, so that we can show that this actually is a very positive technology and can bring change in a very positive way. And it's something that we're very passionate at Zoox. My co-founder is from Stanford. He's leading the technological development, and I'm leading the product development. I think that combination can lead to outperformance in terms of this product and how people experience it. I think just reading the blogs and the news media as well, I think it's also an idea that's come. People are saying, where's my on-demand robot? I'm ready for it. And so for us, it's just a matter of making this just as fast as we can.
Yes.
I just want to add one point to that. I think it's really designing the total experience, every facet, design innovation focused on all of that and making sure many of those parts are compelling, exciters, and also making sure you've got an operational effectiveness that eliminates the negatives. So it's integrating it around the whole experience, making sure the experience is compelling, making sure the technology helps you make it even more compelling in the future, but very, very importantly, operational effectiveness. The vision I laid out, some of the things I worry about is what happens if somebody leaves their trash in a shared car or they happen to get sick? How do you deal with those operational realities so that 99.999 certain sigma world of operational effectiveness to deliver the experience is as important as the innovative experience itself?
I have one thing to say on that. Tesla is excited about autonomy. We have been rolling out the autopilot feature, which is baby steps and some not so baby steps towards demonstrating what the technology can do. The way we've been approaching it is by making sure that the driver understands what the car knows and what it doesn't know, and we've really invested in a UI, a user interface experience that enables the driver to interact with and understand what the car can see, and that allows you to build trust with, oh, this car knows what it's doing. It can see the lanes. It can see the car in front of me. It can see the bike or the pedestrian or whatever. And so I feel more comfortable. I can trust the vehicle to do its work. At the same token, it also shows you what it can't see. Like if it's a snowy day or something like that, and there's perception issues, it identifies that to you as well. So it is all about developing trust and and that's something that is not always easy. Not every customer likes it. I mean, my wife doesn't enjoy the autopilot feature, but I love it. And I think there's going to be a little bit of that over time. But yeah, Tesla's excited about autonomy. Tesla's excited about electric cars. I think the vision that you guys are describing is an exciting one. I think there's going to be kind of an and approach here. Like there's going to be things happening with shared autonomous cars, and there's going to be still private automobiles, and from my perspective, embedded in the technology and the realities of this year and next year, we are focused on building factories, bringing the cost down, making as many electric cars as possible in the near term, and enabling all these great things that we're talking about on the stage in the long term is an exciting prospect from my perspective.
So we've talked a lot about these elements: electrification, removing the emissions, making it more productive, sharing, enabling a world where our teenagers no longer have to learn to drive. They can be picked up by a shared vehicle. They no longer have to own a car and worry about parking. And then ultimately autonomy, bringing it all together as a service, extending driving into retirement, right? There's good data that shows when you take away the keys from people, they actually die relatively quickly within a few years after that. So suddenly we can actually literally extend life. Maybe in just a few seconds here from each of you, what are you most excited about as we make our transition into this world? And how quickly do you think it's really going to begin? I guess, Larry, you put your stake in the ground already at 5 years as the tipping point. Would love to hear from each of you how quickly this is coming, and what's the big deal? What's the upside?
Okay, I'll go first. I'm most excited about seeing a world without tailpipes. I think that's a less polluting world that is quieter and more pleasant to engage in both as a driver and as a pedestrian. And I'm also excited about bringing the technology at the core of those vehicles, which are low-cost, long-lived batteries, to the grid to enable a fully renewable grid. So I'm excited about both of those things, and Tesla is engaged in both of them, and I'm excited to be part of that. And I'm hopeful. I'm very hopeful. If you asked me 10 years ago where I thought our percentage was on this vision coming to reality, and now, I am so much more positive that it is going to occur standing in front of you today than I was 10 years ago, and I think that's amazing. I think that shows how much we can do in such a short period of time.
Thanks, Drew.
I'm excited about saving 1.25 million lives a year. I think it's possible. And in that pathway, creating a form of mobility that people love and it happens to be sustainable. I really can see a future where the machines we're riding around in are things that we wear, not that we drive, and they're things that we park in our closet, not in a garage. I think that's all within our grasp. I would say it's in the time frame of my career, and I don't have a whole lot left, but I think the tipping point is pretty quick. I'm really excited about that future.
Thank you.
So, for hundreds of years, transportation has connected the globe. If you think about that, there was global trade going on for a long, long time. Technology in the last 20 to 30 years has connected people. It's connected the globe as well. It's connected them individually, not commerce, but them individually. I think the future is bright, a combination of the fact that technology and innovation is going to help commerce to occur more efficiently, more responsibly. People are going to be empowered professionally and personally, and people in the developed world are going to be able to rise out of poverty, extreme poverty in the middle class, as we heard the other day. Technologies, both computerized, sitting in front of a terminal or holding a tablet, as well as the computers in our car or the computers that we are riding in, are going to do the same for them in their personal lives as well. And that's what I'm most excited about, I believe.
As an Australian, I'm of course most excited about being able to drink a beer in an autonomous vehicle without getting arrested.
Excellent. Well, that's it.
But beyond that,
Okay, you got another one. You got another one. All right.
Is there more?
I mean, for me, it's a robotics piece. I think I'm very passionate about robotics, and for me, that's what this is really about. We're actually the dawn of a new age, a new era, and being able to define and pioneer what that is, I think it can lead to a new way of having symbiosis with devices on this planet that can lead to outperformance that is probably more profound than we realize sitting here today.
So we're all looking forward to you coming to a future Vail Global Energy Forum in your shared autonomous electric vehicle to be able to enjoy that beer on the way, and where driving becomes the distraction rather than using your mobile phone or your digital device. And with that, a big thank you to our panel here, and enjoy the rest of the day.